Hi everyone, this next video is going to show you how to render your very first scene in Maya using lights, cameras, and materials. The rendering plugin that we're going to use today is called Mental Ray and is a separate download from the Autodesk website. It's free, and this next part of the video is going to show you how to download and install Mental Ray to work with Maya. Okay, let's get started. Maya includes a rendering plugin called Mental Ray that you have to download separately from the website. You can find the link in the PDF or you can Google it. So here I am downloading the Mental Ray plugin. It should only take a minute. And then once it's done downloading, I'm going to install it. It's going to ask me where I want to put it. By default, it should be fine. Click Next and install. So now that it's installed, back in Maya, we have to go to Windows, Settings, Preferences, Plugin Manager, and scroll down to where it says Maya ATOMR. Load, Auto Load, and click Close. From here we go to Render Settings, Maya Software, and we change that to Mental Ray. Click Close, and we've successfully installed the Mental Ray plugin, and we're ready to go. Hi everyone, welcome back. Hopefully Mental Ray installed correctly and is ready to go. Remember to check the PDF that comes with this video file for the link to Mental Ray and any other updates that I neglected to mention in the video. Let's take a look at how this scene is set up. This window right here is called the render view and displays the rendered output from Maya. Let's minimize this window for a second here and let's check again to make sure your scene is set up correctly. Click this button for the render display settings and make sure that render using Mental Ray is selected from the pull down menu. Okay, so this scene is set up like any other scene that we've already done. I'm using 4 primitives here: a cube, a sphere, a pyramid, and a cylinder. And then there's this backdrop, which is a 3-surface cube. And then there's actually one light in the scene. This is what a light looks like. I'm just going to save the scene here. And then I'm going to make a new scene and I'll build it back up with you guys right now. Okay, so let's turn the grid back on so I can see where I am in the scene here. And let's make our shapes first. Let's do a sphere. We'll move it to the side. A cube. Move it somewhere over here. Cylinder. And a pyramid. So I'm just placing these randomly by dragging the handles. And let's go back to the cylinder here and turn in the channel box. Let's go to polycylinder here and turn the subdivisions to about 50. So it'll look much smoother. Let's also click this icon here to turn on wireframe on shaded. And let's also create a plane by clicking this. Let's go to create polygon primitives plane. Let's make sure interactive creation is unchecked, and I'm going to click plane. You can also do that by using this button. So let's scale up the plane by pressing R and dragging out like this. So at this point we can turn off the grid because the plane is on the ground. And let's pull up some of these shapes. So I'm going to move this up like this. Move this up like this. Pull this up. Move it just a little more closer together. So now at this point, let's quickly go into our render settings by clicking that and making sure under render using, let's select mental ray again. And in the first tab, let's turn common, on the common tab, let's go down to image size and let's do HD 720. I'm going to click close. Also, now I'm going to go to view camera settings. I'm going to turn on resolution gate, which will make a box that's the size of the resolution I'm rendering. And then everything outside this box is masked off. However, I'm going to turn the mask off by going to view camera settings and unchecking gate mask. So this is nice because I have a little green box telling me exactly the extent of my image, but then the mask is gone, so I can still see stuff on the other side. So why don't we begin to zoom in a little and set up the scene. I'm not going to make it exactly like before because it's not too important and I can't remember exactly how it was. Let's something like this, and let's go to view, select camera, and when you select the camera, this frame turns white, and I'm going to press S on the keyboard. S will keyframe the position of the camera. So now when I, let's say, move somewhere else, I can go down to this little timeline and move it back and forth, and the camera will pop back to where it originally was when I keyframed it. So it's pretty nice to be able to, rotate around the scene, and then at a certain point go back and sort of slide this back and forth and look at what I have locked in here. So I also want to select these two edges on this ground plane by shift right clicking, going to edge. Sorry, excuse me, it's just selecting the object and right clicking, going to edge. And then selecting this edge, and then shift right clicking and going to extrude. And then let's just pull up on the blue arrow to pull these walls up like this. And so we're beginning to look like we have a room set up here. So now what I'm going to do is move this sphere a little more forward in the scene and pull it up a little so it's not intersecting the ground plane. I'm going to take this square, this cube, and actually I'm going to scale it up a little bit and rotate it slightly because I think I rotated them in the final scene. And let's move this a little forward. Maybe we'll scale it down just a little. Let's grab this pyramid back here, scale it up, pull it up into the air a little bit. Now you guys should be following along, but you don't have to copy these shapes in the way they're placed exactly. It's more about following and learning the techniques right now rather than duplicating the exact layout of these objects. Okay, so that looks pretty good. Now let's get this up a little bit. And so now we can go up here and press this button, which will render the scene. Okay, that's the default render with no lights and no materials and no shadows. So it doesn't look that great, but you can see the difference between the rendered view, which is much smoother, and the wireframe that you normally work with. So what I want to do next is add a light to the scene by going to create lights. Let's do an area light, and that should appear in the middle of your scene like this. And I'm going to go W and pull up the light. So this line here is the direction that the light is aiming. So I'll just pull it up like this and leave this here like this for now. and I'm going to drag the timeline and pop back into the rendered view. And let's go into our display render settings and turn on global illumination. So let me do that again real quick. So let's go to display render settings, and under the quality tab, let's turn overall quality to 1. And this is cut off by my menu, but change this indirect diffuse GI mode. Let's switch it to on GI prototype. I think that's it. So let's press close. And let's zoom out a little bit and look at what's in this light. Select the light, and let's go to Attribute Editor. And the intensity is 1 right now. Let's actually scrub the timeline. And with the light still selected, let's just press render and see what that looks like. So this is running really slow right now, but this is what the process of rendering looks like. The faster your computer is, the faster this will render. But admittedly, I have this set on kind of settings that are a bit too high right now. But this gives me a chance to talk about renderings and rendering quality. So you can see the computer is drawing each square, and as each square is drawn, it moves on to the new one. So this also depends on the size that you put in your render settings. So the larger the image is, of course, the slower it is that it renders. So this one is 720 by 480, I believe, and I think it's rendering a little too slow for my taste. So let's fix that in a second. Okay, that looks pretty good. It was a little slow, so I'm going to go back to this menu, and from GI prototype, I'm going to switch it to Final Gather, which is the older rendering system, but it's slightly faster. I'm still not happy with the layout, so let's move some of these shapes a little closer to each other so that there's some overlap, so you understand like what's in front of what, and there's some depth to the scene. Maybe we can also zoom in a lot more in the scene. Okay, and then I'm going to actually go to View, Select Camera, since I moved the camera now, and I'm going to press S again to save the new position of the camera. And so let's get some materials and color in here. I think the first thing we should do is select this back wall, and right-click, and Assign New Material. A list is going to pop up like this, and we're going to go down and select Blinn. And if you're not in your attribute editor, you should click here and get to your attribute editor. And under Blinn 1, let's click on the color, and let's give this a kind of a light blue color. So let's click this cyan, but then let's turn the saturation down quite a bit. And that should be good. And we can name this background blue and press enter, and that's the name of the material now. So let's select the sphere and do the same thing again. Right click, assign new material, and once again we'll pick Blinn. Now this time let's just give it a bright color. Let's make it red. Let's click the sphere, assign new material, Blinn. Let's just go right on down the line. Yellow. With the cylinder, assign new material, Blinn. Let's do this green. And finally, for the pyramid that I actually want to size up a little bit and turn slightly, let's assign a new material, Blinn yet again, and this time this blue. Okay, so let's render that, but before I do that, let's turn my render settings down to HD 540, just slightly smaller. It should render a bit faster this time. And go. Okay, it's still rendering. You can see the buckets appearing, but that's pretty good. I think the walls are a bit too shiny, so I'm going to go back and select the wall, and in your attribute editor, let's go to background blue again and change it from a blend, and from the drop down menu, let's make it into a Lambert. So that should give it a more matte finish, and we'll render again and see how that looks. Okay, much better. So I also think the shapes themselves are a bit too shiny, so let's go through all these materials and adjust some of the settings. So for this sphere, let's click Blend 2, and let's go down to the specular shading section, and let's turn reflectivity down by dragging. Let's turn that down to 3, and let's turn specular roll-off down as well to about somewhere like 0.4. So let's go through and do that to all of them. 0.3 and 0.4. We can also type these in. 0.4, 0.3, 0.4, 0.3. Oh, 0.3. 0.4, 0.3, 0.4, and 0.3. And let's also zoom out a little bit, and I'm going to make it so that the light, F to recenter, I'm going to make it so that the light is a little bit angled like this so that the shadows aren't as direct from above. So it looks more like that now. So I'm going to drag the timeline real quick and get back to our original position and render this again. Okay, pretty good. So that pretty much covers everything I wanted to cover in terms of techniques, so that you guys can start rendering out some of your previous work. In fact, I'm going to show you guys how to do that real quick. So let's select all these, and I'm going to press Control H to just hide them. So now we have just this empty room, and I'm going to go back and File, Import, and I'm going to go back to a previous file. Let's import these. How about those triangle spikes from the previous lesson? So you can see that they appear in the scene in the corner here. And let's open up our outliner by clicking this. And so we haven't opened this for a while, but so you can see that these first four objects, the sphere, the cube, the cylinder, and the pyramid, are grayed out because they're hidden. And now I have these pyramids here. So let's click the first one, and then shift click the last one, and then press Control G to group them into a group. And then I can double click this, and let's just give it a name. Let's just call them pyramids. Enter. And then that should be good enough. So let's get back to this window and modify center pivot, and let's move this to the center of the room a little bit. And now let's snap our camera back to the original position, and we can move the camera back slightly because it's not quite framing all of them. And I'm just trying to get it so it doesn't show the roof up here, the end of the walls. But I can also select both of the walls and just move them up real quick so that they're out of the scene. Okay, and now I'm going to press View, Select Camera. I'm going to save the new camera position, and let's also go back and select these spikes by actually clicking this button, which selects the group, and then pressing W, and let's move them down slightly so that they're submerged into the ground. And why don't we start by assigning them the same material as the wall for now. So let's give that assign existing material. Right click, assign existing material, Lambert 2. So why don't we also bring some of the other shapes back in by going to display, show, all, and moving them out of the way a little bit. Let's see, this is here. Maybe we'll leave that cube sort of back there. Okay. Let's render this and take a look. Okay, pretty cool. We're definitely going to come back to more advanced rendering techniques in a future video, but this should give you enough skills right now to go back to any of the previous examples and render them out pretty nicely. Okay, see you in the next video.